A very warm welcome everyone. Today in this class, we will be continuing the chapter Metals and Non-Metals, Class 9, Unit 17 under the subject Science and Technology. So I hope you have all the materials that you need for this class, your notebooks and pen. So let us start this class by recalling a few things that we had learned in our previous class. So let me ask you a question. So, do you guys remember how we can differentiate metals from other elements? I hope you guys remember at least a certain points that I have mentioned here. So these are the physical properties of metal that we had studied in the previous class. And using this list of properties, we can differentiate metals from other elements. So the first property that we had studied was luster. So metal has the shiny appearance that is known as luster. The second property is hardness. Metals are usually hard, so it cannot be easily broken down or cut into pieces. The third point was sonorous. So when metal is struck, then it produces a certain type of sound. So that is the sonorous properties of metal. The fourth property was metal is a good conductor of heat as well as electricity. The fifth property we studied was malleability. So do you guys remember what malleable means? Yes, malleability is that property of metal in which the metal can be beaten down into thin sheet. So what is ductility? Yes, ductility is the property of metal in which it can be stretched into a wire. And the final property that we had studied was metal has high boiling and melting temperature, and we also studied the reason for it. It was because the atoms in the metals are closely packed. So we had to supply a lot of energy so that the atoms move apart from each other so that it can be converted into liquid state. So that is the reason why metal had higher melting and boiling point than other type of elements. So from using this physical properties of metal, we could distinguish it from non-metals or other metalloids. So now we have already studied about certain properties of metals, and previously we had also studied its physical and chemical properties as well. Now let me ask you a question. Do you guys think that metals are essential for metabolic activities in our body? So metabolic activities are those activities, those chemical processes that is very much essential for us human beings or any organism so that they can remain alive. So do you think there are certain metals that are essential for these type of activities in human bodies? Okay, let me give you an example. So if someone has a very pale skin and they are always tired and fatigued, they have cold hands and feet, and they also suffer from headache and dizziness, and they have chest pain and their heartbeat is a little fast, then what do their family members or their friends usually say? They say that maybe the level of hemoglobin in your body has decreased. So you might have iron deficiency in your body. So you must take in iron supplement or eat food that is rich in iron. So this example can answer the question that I asked you. Yes, there are certain metals that is very much essential for our human body so that our body can perform certain activities, basic activities to remain alive. So let me give you another example. So all of the sudden when the muscle in certain part of your body involuntarily tightens and spasms, then what happens? Your friends and family who is close to you, they just rush to you and stretch your leg. And what do they say? You have lack of potassium in your body, so you should eat a banana because banana is rich in potassium. So these are certain examples that we have heard since our childhood. So keeping all this in mind, I hope you guys have already understood what we are going to study about in this chapter. We are going to study about metals that are required for human body and certain metals that has harmful effect on the human body. So let us start this chapter. So we will focus on 4 metals that are essential for human body: zinc, sodium, iron and potassium. Now let us start with zinc. So every metals or every essential thing that is essential for human body, if we have to supply it to our body, the most easy way that we can do is by eating it. So there are certain food that has high amount of certain metals that is essential for our body. So if we have to talk about the sources of zinc, the plant-based sources are sunflower seeds, cereals such as wheat, maize, oats, rice, millet, barleys, etc. We also have mushroom, pumpkin seed and flaxseed. Now from animal we can gain zinc through meat, fish and eggs, as well as certain milk and milk products like cheese, etc. Now these are the sources of zinc, and these zinc in our body has many advantages, such as zinc usually helps in the production of antibody in our body, and antibody is those type of thing in our body that fight against foreign harmful organism that try to enter inside our body. So it enhances, that is, it improves the immune power of human body. So since zinc helps in formation of antibodies, it also enhances the ability of our body to fight against the bacteria and viruses. Another essential advantage is zinc is a component of many proteins, and zinc also stabilizes the structure of hereditary materials such as DNAs and RNAs. So that's why zinc forms proteins and hereditary materials in the human bodies as well. Now another crucial advantage of zinc is zinc helps the baby that is present inside the womb of a pregnant woman. So how it helps is, it helps in the organ formation as well as the skeleton formation of the baby. Not only that, it also helps in the development of the nervous system as well as the entire circulatory system. So hearing all this, we can say that zinc helps in the overall development of the embryo during the pregnancy. Now these are the advantages of zinc. Now if this zinc we have a deficiency of zinc in our body, then it has many effects, negative effects as well. So some of the effects that might happen is hair fall. Due to deficiency of zinc, you may also suffer from hair fall. Your sense of smell and taste may also decline. You might feel lazy, and you might also lose weight and suffer from diarrhea. And not only that, if you have certain wounds or injuries in your body, if you have zinc deficiency, then the wound or the injury will take longer time to heal. Now let us study about another metal, that is iron. So the major sources of iron is broccoli, meat and fish, cereals as well as spinach. So now the advantages of iron in human body is, now you can see our blood contains lots of cells, that is RBCs, WBCs and platelets. Now these red blood cells, it contains hemoglobin inside it, and that hemoglobin is formed from iron. And that hemoglobin, which is made up of iron, it helps to transport the oxygen throughout the body. So oxygen that is taken in from lungs, it reaches to the heart, then it is supplied to the entire body, and again back to heart, then to lungs. So we can say that blood that contains iron that is present inside the hemoglobin helps to transfer oxygen throughout the body. So another advantage is iron is absolutely necessary for the process of DNA replication. that is to form new DNA. DNA is a hereditary material. So during the formation of DNA, many enzymes, they work together to form a new DNA. And iron is very necessary so that those enzymes would work appropriately and there will be no mutation while forming new DNAs. So that's why iron forms DNA in the body. Now another thing is iron helps in respiration for the production of energy. So what is respiration? Yes, respiration is the process in which the glucose that is present inside the body, it is broken down by the oxygen we inhaled to give us energy. So what happens is, this is the alveoli that is present inside the lungs. So when you take in air, the oxygen, it then transfers from alveoli to the blood vessels, and here you can see that the RBC contains hemoglobin, which is made up of iron. It helps in transport of oxygen so that the oxygen can be transported to the tissues that contains glucose. So what happens is, the glucose that we gain by eating certain food, it then reacts with the oxygen we inhale, and the oxygen that is transported by hemoglobin, which is made up of iron, to the tissues, and that oxygen, it then breaks down the glucose to form carbon dioxide and water, and it also releases large amount of energy that is required for our daily activities as well as our inner metabolic activities. So indirectly, iron, it helps in respiration for the production of energy. Another advantage is iron maintains the immune power of the body. How it does is, iron is absolutely necessary for the creation and activation of the immune cells. And immune cells are those cells that fight against the bacteria, viruses and other pathogens that is trying to harm our body. So that's why we can say that iron also maintains the immune power of the body. Now, these are all the advantages of the iron. Now, there are certain effects that our body will suffer if we have the iron deficiency. So the first thing is, a person might suffer from anemia, because if we don't have enough iron in our body, then what happens? The body cannot form enough hemoglobin that is present inside the RBC. So the level of RBC declines, and if the level of RBC or hemoglobin declines, then there will not be enough RBC so that the oxygen can be carried throughout the body. So that's why people suffer from anemia. And another effect is, people, they usually feel tired. So why they feel tired means, if there is lack of iron, there is lack of hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is the element that transport oxygen to necessary part of the body. Now, if there is lack of oxygen due to lack of iron, what happens is, the process of respiration declines, and if the process of respiration declines, energy production is reduced. So if you don't have enough energy in your body, you tend to feel tired. And now, since our body lacks oxygen, our body tries to overcome that lack of oxygen, so that you start to gasp for airs and you have shortness of breath and have difficulty in breathing, because you are trying to inhale more oxygen because your body is not getting enough oxygen. So these are the effects of lack of iron in the human body. Now let us study about another metal, that is sodium. Now the sources of sodium, the major source of sodium is the salt, the table salt that we put in our food and we consume. So that is one of the major source that supplies sodium in our human body. Another sources of sodiums are meat, eggs, etc. Now let us study about certain advantages of sodium in the human body. Sodium is very important metals, and it helps in many different metabolic activities in the human body, and it is crucial for our survival. So the first advantage that we will talk about is, sodium balances the water inside the human body. So now how it does is, Now, how sodium balances water in the human body is when there is increase in the sodium level in the body, what happens is it triggers the brain, which allows us to feel thirsty. So, when the body has higher amount of sodium, it tells the brain to give the signal of thirst. So when we feel thirsty, what happens? We tend to drink more water. So now when we drink water, our body will be supplied with water, and it will then dilute the amount of sodium that is present in our body. So the level of sodium decreases. Not only that, side by side, if the sodium level is increased in our body, it triggers the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is an endocrine gland that what it does is it secretes a certain hormone called as vasopressin. Now, this hormone, what it does is it tells the kidney to conserve more water. It tells the kidneys not to secrete more water in the urine. So, what it does is the kidney conserves water. Now, if the kidney conserves water, the loss of water from our body is decreased. So, what happens again? The level of water increases and it dilutes the sodium, and the level of sodium decreases. Now, if the level of sodium keeps on decreasing, what happens is it again triggers the brain, so that it will tell the brain not to make the person feel thirsty more. So, what happens? You do not want to drink more water. So, what will happen? It will conserve the level of sodium in the body, because the level of we do not have additional amount of water inside our body. Not only that, this if there is decline in sodium, it again triggers the pituitary gland to not secrete the hormone vasopressin, and if the hormone vasopressin's level declines, the kidney stops conserving the water. So what happened? Now the level of sodium again increases. So this is how sodium balances the amount of water or fluid in our body. Now the another advantage of sodium in the human body is it helps the muscle to contract and relax. So muscles present in all our body that contracts and relax due to presence of sodium. And not only that, there is another very important advantage, that is it helps in nerve impulse conduction. Now, our body, it cannot perform any function until and unless our brain sends an impulse, a signal to perform a certain activity. So, what happens is our brain, it sends the signal to different parts of our body. That is the essential part that it wants the body to perform a certain function through nerve, and nerve conducts the impulse, and for the nerve to conduct the impulse from brain to that part of the body and back from that part of the body to brain, sodium is very important, because sodium is the major electrolyte that helps in nerve impulse conduction throughout the body. Now these are the advantages of sodium. Now there are many effects in our body that happens if we have sodium deficiency. The first thing is you suffer from disease known as hyponatremia. So hyponatremia is a condition in which your body has lower concentration of sodium in blood. It is lower, generally less than 135 millimole per liter. If the sodium concentration is less than 135 millimole per liter, then you are suffering for hyponatremia. And due to this, what happens is the muscles in our body starts to spasm, because for proper contraction and relaxation of muscles, sodium is essential, and due to its deficiency, muscles starts to spasm. Not only that, you also start vomiting, you lose your senses, and you might also faint. Not only that, you might also reach coma, and you might also die due to lack of sodium. So, maintaining the level of sodium in our body is very crucial, because it has very big side effects or bad effects in our body. Now let us study about another metal, that is potassium. Now the major sources of potassiums are fruits, vegetables, milk and its products, soybeans, avocado, bamboo shoot, as well as banana. Now the advantages of potassium in human body is it regulates the fluid balance, it also helps in nerve impulse conduction and helps in muscle contraction. Now potassium and sodium, they work together to perform these three functions, because sodium also regulates fluid balance alongside potassium. So sodium and potassium, they work together to regulate the fluid balance in the body. The sodium and potassium, it also together helps in nerve impulse conduction and also in muscle contraction. And additionally, what potassium does is it also prevents the weakening of bone, because that is, it also prevents osteoporosis. How it does is, potassium, it reduces how much calcium our body will lose through urine. So it does not allow high amount of calcium to be excreted through urine. So it conserves the calcium in the body, and calcium is very important for our bone, because it gives our bone the strength. So if there is less amount of potassium in the body, it cannot retain much calcium that is necessary for our bone to stay strong. So if potassium is declined, if we have potassium deficiency, the calcium gets lost from our body through urine, and our bone becomes weaker, and so we may suffer from osteoporosis if we have potassium deficiency. Not only that, potassium also prevents kidney stone. Now kidney stones are those clumps of material that is found in the concentrated urine, and that kidney stone, calcium is a very common mineral that is present in it. And what potassium does, as I mentioned earlier, potassium prevents the excretion of calcium into the urine. So if there is less amount of calcium in the urine, then the chances of formation of kidney stone also declines. So potassium also prevents kidney stones. Now, there are various effects that our body suffers if we have deficiency of potassium. The first thing is you might suffer from hypokalemia. And hypokalemia is a condition in which the amount of potassium in our body is too low, that is lower than 3 millimole per liter. Then we can say that we are suffering from hypokalemia. And if you suffer from hypokalemia, that is lack of potassium, what it happens is it increases the blood pressure. Why? Because potassium helps to remove the excess level of sodium from the body. Now, if the potassium is already in very little amount, then it cannot excrete the high level of sodium in the body. So, if there is high level of sodium in the body, our blood pressure tends to rise. So, if we have lack of potassium, our blood pressure usually increases. And not only that, we might also suffer from constipation. So, how it happens is, as I mentioned earlier, potassium helps in the contraction and relaxation of muscles, that is proper functioning of muscles. Now, if we have low potassium levels, then it can affect the muscles in the intestine, and it will slow the passage of food and waste through the intestine. And due to this, it affects the intestine, and it might cause bloating as well as constipation. And the another thing is, potassium helps to widen the blood vessels, that is to increase the diameter of the blood vessel. Now if your body has less amount of potassium, your blood vessels cannot widen, so the blood vessels will be narrow, and if you have narrow blood vessels, what will happen? There will the muscles in your body will not get adequate blood flow, so the muscle will weaken and it will lead to entire body weakness. Now these are all the effects that happen due to lack of potassium. Now we already studied about the advantages of these four metals and how will it affect our body if we if we have deficiency of those metals. Now let us study a few effects that might happen if we have excessive amount of these metals in our body. So if we have excessive zinc in our body, then it will lead to the metal copper deficiency in the body, and if we have copper deficiency, we will suffer from many diseases such as neurological problems, our body will be numb and our arms and legs will also weaken. So this is the effect of excessive amount of zinc in the body. Now if you have excessive amount of iron in your body, the iron, it gets deposited in our livers, in our heart as well as pancreas. Now if the iron gets deposited there, what happens? You will suffer from certain liver diseases, you might also suffer from heart problems as well as diabetes. Now if you intake high level of sodium, then what will happen? It will cause high blood pressures, it might also cause kidney diseases, kidney stones, etc. Now if you have excessive amount of potassium in your body, then it will cause irregular heartbeat, and due to that, in worst cases, you might also get a heart attack. So excessive amount of metals is also not favorable and deficiency is also not favorable. So we should always eat or take in all these metals in our body in appropriate amount. Now we have already studied about advantages of many metals that helps in our basic metabolic activities. Now let us look at certain metals that have negative impact on our body. So we will study about two metals, lead and mercury. Now let us start with lead. Now lead is usually found in many materials that is present around us. Lead is also used to protect our body from radiations. It is also used inside the car battery. It is also present in petroleums. It is also present in certain paint that we use to paint our houses, as well as in certain lead crystal glasses. And since it is present all around us, we usually tend to intake it. How? If we eat food that contains if we eat food from the utensils that is like from lead crystal glass, we may intake lead in certain amount. Not only that, the petroleum, when we burn petroleum while we are driving our automobiles, we may intake lead through the fumes it releases. Now those lead has many negative effects in our body, and lead tends to affect children more than the adults. So what a negative impact it does is we might suffer from headache, stomach ache, our behavior and attitude may also change because it also slows the development of our brain, and we might also suffer from anemia. Not only that, if we intake lead through skin or through fumes or if through food, what happens is it usually goes and deposits in our bone. You can see here in the figure, the lead has been deposited in our bone. Now what this does is, our bone, it contains bone marrow, and that bone marrow that is present inside the body, it helps it, what it does is it forms new blood cells, that is our WBC, RBCs and platelets. It is formed by bone marrow that is present inside the bone. Now if there is lead deposits inside the bone, what happens is it hampers the formation of the blood cells entirely. And not only that, our bone, as I mentioned earlier, it strengthens due to presence of calcium. Now if there is lead present in the bone, it stops the absorption of calcium by the bone. So our bone cannot absorb calcium due to presence of lead in it, and then it weakens our bone. So these are the negative impacts of lead in our body. Now let us study about another metal, that is mercury. Now mercury is used in usually in thermometers, but nowadays the use of the mercury thermometer has already been replaced by digital thermometer in so many places, but yet there are certain places they still use mercury thermometer. And mercury is also used in barometer to measure the pressure, and the mercury vapor is also present inside the tube light. Now in any way, if we inhale this through fumes, or if our skin absorbs the mercury, or if we intake even one drop of mercury, it is very harmful for our health, and it might also cause death due to mercury poisoning, because mercury is a very harmful metal. Now the harmful effect of mercury is also known as hydrargyria, or you can also call this as mercurialism. Now this harmful effect of mercury, what it does is, the mercury usually it triggers blood clot formation. So if we have blood vessels and we have blood cells in it, now the mercury triggers the formation of blood clots. Now that clot, when it is traveling through the blood and it reaches places where the diameter of the blood vessels is small, then it will block that vessels. Now our heart has very tiny blood vessels. Now if that clot, if it reaches our heart, what will happen? We might suffer from heart attack and we might die. So mercury can also block the blood vessels and cause death. Not only that, compounds of mercury are very harmful for our brain, as well. Now mercury also harms the babies that is present inside the womb, and because the placenta, even though the placenta has a barrier between the mother's body and the baby's body, and the placenta acts as a barrier and it prevents so many harmful things from reaching the baby, but mercury can cross the placenta easily. So if the mercury, if the mother takes in mercury in any way, and if it is exposed to the baby, then the baby can have severe brain damage and also have hearing as well as vision problems also. So this compounds of mercuries have many negative effects in the mental development of the child, as well as their visions and visual problems, and in overall development, because it might also stop the entire development of baby in the womb. So mercury is very harmful for our body. Now we have already studied about all these effects, harmful effects, as well as of certain metals, advantages of certain metals. Now let us try to test our knowledge by trying to solve a question So let us try to solve this question. So we have to match these points with these metals. Now, which metal prevents osteoporosis? Yes, it's potassium, because potassium, it does not allow calcium, it retains the calcium in our body, and it prevents high amount of calcium to be excreted through urine, and if the calcium is retained, our bone needs calcium to remain strong. So if our bone is strong, we will not suffer from osteoporosis. So that is how potassium prevents osteoporosis. Now, which metal helps in the antibody production? Yes, it's zinc. Since zinc helps in antibody production, it improves the immunity of our body. Now, which metal it hampers the blood cell formation? Yes, it's lead, because lead gets deposited inside the bone, and when it gets deposited inside the bone has bone marrow inside it, and the bone marrow it forms new blood cells, and if the lead is there, it hampers the bone marrow, hence hampering the blood cell formation process. So lead hampers the blood cell formation. Now, which metal causes hyponatremia? Yes, it's sodium, because hyponatremia is a condition due to less amount of sodium in our blood. Now, which metal causes blockage of blood vessels? Yes, it's mercury. Because mercury triggers blood clot formation, and it might reaches the tiny blood vessels and block the blood flow. Now, the final question is, which metal helps in transportation of oxygen? And yes, the only remaining metal, that is iron, helps in transportation of oxygen. How? Because iron helps in making hemoglobin, and hemoglobin is something that is present inside the RBC that transport the oxygen from one place of the body to another through blood. So, iron helps in transportation of oxygen. So, I hope you have understood everything I taught in this class. We studied about metals, we studied how we can differentiate metals from non-metals or metalloids. We also studied about many metals that is very much advantageous for our basic metabolic activities, and certain metals that is very harmful for our body. Now, this much for today. I'll see you guys in the next class.